joining us now to discuss is the Democratic governor of Oregon, Tina Kotek. Governor, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you, Casey. Thanks for having me.
I want to start by asking you about the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, who has arrived in Portland to assess this situation. Have you met with her? And if so, what was discussed?
Yeah, I learned through unofficial channels yesterday the secretary would be visiting Portland, so I reached out to her personally, and I wanted to speak with her face to face. As governor, my job is to stand up for Oregonians, protect them, and just have a direct conversation with the federal administration about what is happening on the ground here in Portland. We talked about safety. We talked about safely allowing folks to peacefully protest. No one in Oregon is interested in seeing military policing on our streets when people are protesting peacefully. I also brought up the issue of the misuse of tear gas. We have some very strict laws in Oregon about how we interact with protesters and people who are lawfully demonstrating. So it was a straightforward conversation. I'm glad she is here on the ground to assess the situation because she needs to see what the reality is here.
So let me just back up a little bit. So you had not heard from the Department of Homeland Security at all ahead of this planned visit. You reach out personally to her. Was she receptive? I mean, was it difficult to get the meeting? How were your overtures received?
She was receptive. We have, I did speak with her more than a week or so ago when we had heard that the president was considering military deployment in Oregon. We spoke on that very first day before I spoke with the president. And so I've continued to keep those lines of communication open. And I'm glad she was able to sit down. When she landed by plane at Portland Airport, we sat down, we talked about what was going on. And and I really emphasized with her, and she is meeting with local law enforcement, that local law enforcement is working very hard to keep the situation calm. What we are seeing, however, are tactics from the federal agents that are escalating things. And I really asked them to reassess what they're doing. The goal is to keep everybody safe.
Did she tell you, or do you have an understanding of who or how the tactics that should be used by federal law enforcement are being communicated to them?
Well, I think it's an interesting situation. State law here, 5 years ago, in the midst of the George Floyd protests, the Oregon legislature passed laws here to be very clear, like when you can use tear gas, how you have to notify the crowd, how law enforcement interacts with people who are lawfully protesting. And I would hope and expect, and what I asked was for the federal agents to follow the law here. We also talked about the fact that what is happening here is not what other people think outside of Portland is happening, right? Remember the ruling from the court with the idea of deploying the military, the Oregon National Guard and the California National Guard and the Texas National Guard to Portland. The court ruled that was unlawful because it was, quote, untethered from reality. She is here. It's a beautiful fall day in Portland. She gets to see what is happening in a 1-block radius of the ICE facility. And I'm glad she's meeting with local law enforcement because she could see and hear the type of tactics that they are engaging in to keep this situation as calm as possible.
What would you ask for, if anything, from the federal government to aid your local law enforcement in fighting crime? You've obviously said you don't want military police. What do you need, if anything?
Well, this isn't a crime situation. Crime statistics in Portland are down. Sure, Portland's a large city. They have things they have to deal with. But when it comes to the situation on the ground, what we're hearing from the federal administration, that this is a war zone in front of this facility. It's simply not true. And if I had anything to ask the federal administration is follow the rule of law from the federal court. Send the Oregon National Guard troops home, the California National Guard troops home. They don't need to be here, and it's unlawful that they are here in my state.
So you're obviously not the only state that has been affected here. We've been reporting today about Texas and other National Guard members landing in Illinois. Have you spoken with Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker about this or others as this legal fight continues?
Yeah, I've been speaking with Governor Pritzker in particular almost on a daily basis. It's really important to understand that this isn't just about Democratic-led states or Democratic-led cities. What is happening here when the federal government, without real facts, and the court has said there are no facts on the ground to justify this, is talking about putting military troops in American cities, it is crossing a line. This is a threat to our democracy, and we need to allow the rule of law to be upheld, which says there is no insurrection, there is no rebellion here, and the president needs to stand down, and we need to send these troops home.
What would you say to Republican governors that are participating in this along with the president? Governor Greg Abbott, for example, and the Texas National Guard being sent. What would your message to Governor Abbott be?
I think it's important for every governor in our country to really think this through. As the governor of Oregon, I am the commander-in-chief of the Oregon National Guard. That is true for every governor across our great country. The idea that a president could misuse and abuse the power to deploy the military into our American cities should chill everybody. This is a very serious situation. And I would urge Republican governors not to volunteer their troops, because this is not who we are as Americans. This is not what the law says. And this is a threat to who we are as a democracy. And it needs to stop. And when the judge was very clear, and she ruled twice, and she said, the facts on the ground do not match what the president is doing with his authority. He does not have the authority, according to the court, to deploy military troops in Portland.
All right. Governor Tina Kotek of Oregon, thank you very much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.